Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. So Smarter Energy Management in 2026. I've made a prompt start because we've got lots to get through, but if people join later, I'm sure there won't be much content missed at the start. So as I said, welcome to our webinar. I'm Sally-Ann Hurn, and I'm an Assurance Director and the Sustainability Lead here at Duncan & Topless. For those of you who are not aware, Duncan & Topless is an accountancy firm with 14 offices, primarily around the East Midlands area, but a wider group that covers a large proportion of the UK. We consider ourselves to be our clients' advisors. Rarely do I attend a client meeting that doesn't cover the impact of economic policies, discussions around business challenges, and we find ourselves well placed to share our insights in potential opportunities to overcome these issues. So today we've collaborated with Fidelity Energy for this webinar. And when myself and John Haw, the CEO of Fidelity Energy, initially spoke about how we could work together to benefit our clients, the discussions were around energy procurement, planning, paying for the energy that you actually use, and how sustainability can help your business. We agreed in February to host the webinar session, and as you can imagine, the content of the webinar has changed significantly since our original meeting. So today, the purpose of our webinar is to help guide businesses through the current energy situation, help you plan for the future, and to ensure your business is sustainable. And by that, I mean able to operate in the future at a profit. So some statistics that I looked at this morning. The Office of National Statistics, a tongue twister already, reported that there is widespread concerns about economic stability, and this impacts turnover, raw material costs, labour and energy. The ONS reported that approximately 25% of businesses reported turnover had decreased in February 2026. They also said that 29% of trading businesses reported labour costs as a reason for considering raising their prices in April 26, and 25% of businesses reported energy prices as their reason. And remember, this was at February. CPI for February was at 3.2% for the rolling 12 months. And I don't want to go back or put our heads too far back when it was October 22, when that was at 9.6%. Prices at the pump continue to rise along with availability issues. So the RAC reported at the weekend that petrol prices were up 13% and diesel had climbed 25%. Not only all these factors, but you're also tackling changes to employment law, taxes, minimum wage increases, and other things that significantly impact your business. So all very gloomy. So the question is, what can businesses do to navigate these difficult times? So this session is planned to be 40 minutes long, and I do know that John has a lot of information to share with you. We'll aim to have a Q&A session at the end, and if we run out of time, we'll be happy to follow up with you afterwards. So please feel free to raise your questions in the Q&A section or unmute later when we ask. At that note, I'll pop over and pass over to John. Thanks, John.
Great. Thank you, Sally-Ann. Well, thank you for attending. Yeah, Sally-Ann said it's been a very turbulent couple of days in the energy markets, or couple of weeks. So hopefully we can give you a bit of insight to that. Very briefly about who am I. I have been running Fidelity Energy for 12 years. I'm also the current chair of the Energy Consultants Association, and we're really an organisation body set up to try and raise standards, best practice within our industry. We're a business that does about 20 million in sales at Fidelity, and we have about 850 million under management now of spend. And we're very proud to have won the most trusted consultancy in 24 and the best consultancy in 2025. So hopefully have a little bit of credibility about to know what I'm talking about. So what do we offer? We offer sustainability solutions, global reporting and analytics, assistance with your purchasing and timing of purchases, which at the moment is quite helpful. Really procurement. Attainable as a company we bought a year or so ago, which offers carbon sustainability reporting. And then we have a raft of green energy solutions, consultancy services, and then also consolidation. So we kind of offer a sort of a very broad church of services from very large companies all the way down to very small companies. So what's going on at the moment? I think these two slides are probably the most insightful. Most of you will remember the awful period of the energy crisis. This is price per therm. for gas, and you can see it's very, very similar for the wholesale price for electricity. The reason for that is we burn gas in this country still, a lot of it, to make electricity. So the two things are almost intrinsically linked. And back in 2019, I think I remember selling the Kia Oval a contract at £30 a megawatt. So that'll be right down here. And during the energy crisis or the Ukraine war, we saw prices go all the way up to £600-700 a megawatt. And when things kicked off a couple of weeks ago, this is what everyone's concerns was. At the moment, we're nowhere near there, but it's a useful context to understand just how bad things became, and partly the reasons for that, and partly the reasons for this huge shock where Europe was not prepared for the gas pipelines of Russia to be blown up, and it took quite a while for Europe to recover its energy security in relation to LNG imports. They built a new terminal in Germany pretty quickly, but it still took 18 months. And that was a very prolonged, painful period for people that were having to renew their energy contract during this period. And we saw prices everywhere from 60, 70, 80, even 90p a kilowatt being offered as contracts to customers during this period. And then we had the government step in and try and offer some assistance. But very, very painful. We're not quite there yet, but it's worth having that as a context. So this is what's happened in the last couple of weeks. And I've redone these slides now 3 times already, and I've updated them again this morning latterly. But you can see here the sort of prolonged shift from what was a relatively steady set of prices for the period of almost 2 years into this dramatic period of turbulence that we've seen in the last few weeks. This graph, I think, probably sums it up better than most. So this is the yearly average pence per therm, which is the standard gas price unit over the last period. So this is the current year we're in, 2026, the black year. And you can see for the bulk of 2025 and 2024, prices have been very stable, just around the sort of £70 a therm mark. And we've only just seen this starting to turn in really in February. In fact, the last few weeks, we've seen the lowest gas price in 2 years and the highest gas price in 2 years. So this is quite how profound the market's been. But we're at about 135, £40 a megawatt at the moment, and the same pence per therm. And again, this is the awful year of 2022 when the Ukraine-Russia war commenced. So where are we and where are we going to go? I guess those are the key things that are the most important considerations, and it's a very tricky one for us to sort of deal with, really. If we look at the forward curve is what we look at when we're procuring energy contracts for our customers. So if you were to buy a quarter's energy now, this is the kind of numbers you'd be paying. So for power, this was actually last week's graph, and the reason I showed it is I've updated it. But you can see the movement in just 1 week. What's happening is the forward curve that was looking relatively stable 2 weeks ago is now starting to be pushed up. So if you were looking at a contract starting in summer 28, £56 a megawatt, great prices. Sorry, £58 a megawatt, great prices. Very low levels of turbulence and risk involved in those. But if you look today, they're up to £64, and the winter 27 prices that were up at are now up at £83 when they were only £72. So what we're seeing is markets believing that this issue that we're having, or war rather than issue, sorry, is not going to be a short-term blip. It's starting to impact the future curves further out, and what happens in the short term is really anybody's game. But I think I'm firming up, and the market seems to be firming up on a view that this is not going to be a short-term issue. Even if there's a ceasefire tomorrow, there's a lot of bad blood. There's going to be a lot of guerrilla attacks for a long time to come, which is going to impact the price of commodities going through the Strait of Hormuz. So yeah, just to show you the huge increases we've seen in just only a week in terms of the future curve. So what we're sort of saying to our clients at the moment that are not in contract or in contract until 2028, we're sort of saying it's up to you now. Time to start thinking, is £64 a megawatt an attractive price to start securing volume at now. Obviously, if you're out in a few weeks, you've got little or no ability to outperform the market. But if you have got the privilege of a longer term procurement strategy, which we'd always encourage all of our clients to do, then we're sort of looking at these prices now saying, look, is it worth fixing some or all of your portfolio volume for the 28 period before the price comes in and potentially gets impacted by more volatility? But this is very much everyone's question. Do I fix? Do I fix for 1 year? Do I fix for 2 years? What do I do? What's it going to be? And of course, the honest answer is nobody can give you the answer to that. It's all about risk and how your business organization can cope with that risk. So if your organization can run its business at, I don't know, 28 pence a kilowatt, then you might want to consider fixing. If your business couldn't run its business at 40 pence a kilowatt, then there's a kind of logic would apply to. And if actually you'd rather hold out and see if it goes back down to 22 pence a kilowatt, then that's fine, as long as you understand the risk of the alternative. And I think those kind of honest conversations are really important for us to have with our clients. And it's always a conversation about risk, attitude to risk, and what do we do to prevent risk. So what were we doing? A couple of weeks ago when we got down here, we were saying to our clients, we've seen the lowest price now we've seen in over 2 years, and we encouraged a number of them to fix. Some of them did and were very, very happy. Some of them didn't, and they're now very, very unhappy. And so these are our current future prices here. These are actually of this morning. So this is in, again, pence per therm. And you can see that the winter prices now for summer 27 are almost at a pound a therm, whereas they were only 70 pence only a couple of weeks ago. You can see here. So it really has had a profound impact. Now, what happens from here on? Again, this is anybody's game, and it will depend largely on what happens next. Obviously, whether Trump decides to invade the little island with all the oil on it, whether or not they do a ceasefire, and then also, even if they do agree a ceasefire, how quickly normal shipping can return to the Strait of Hormuz. There's a view that is going to take some time because they've mined the channel, and they still think there'll be guerrilla attacks on those shipping lanes from the Houthis and Iran for some time to come. So, yeah, anyone who's hoping for a short-term blip, I think we're going to be disappointed. Our big concern is if it continues to go up to the kind of price we saw during the energy crisis, and therefore, if you have no strategy, now's a really good time to have a good think about it, and perhaps have a think about what you do and how you can protect yourselves. So again, the market moved again hugely last week, and what we've seen some key, the key sort of things that have been spiking it is the strikes from Israel on Iran, and then the retaliatory Gulf energy infrastructure attacks across 6 countries. The pricing's gone up, 93% wholesale gas went up in 1 week. Prices that we've not seen since February 23. And Qatar produces a huge amount of the world's LNG. We're very fortunate in the UK that we only import a small amount from Qatar. The bulk of our gas comes from the North Sea and from Norway. But unlike, like all commodities, it carries a global price. So even if we can get deliveries, we're going to be paying a higher price for it. And I think the long-term risk is really about the long-term risk to the oil supply and the time it's going to take for ships to divert, the extra cost that's going to carry. I was talking to an insurance specialist who works in shipping. The cost of insuring ships going through the Strait of Hormuz is going to be dramatically more expensive. All these things are going to feed into inflation, and all of these matters are going to start pushing up prices. Quite when and how, again, nobody knows the answer to that. If we did, we would all be very rich indeed. So what do we think might happen? What could limit the price? Let's look at the positive. What might happen? The US military or its allies might secure the Strait of Hormuz. Some analysts believe the US has the capability to do it. The conflict can be short, and Trump might turn around and realise that during the midterms, having high prices will hurt his election chances, so that might push him the other way. Europe, as I said earlier, diversified away much more greatly than in 2022. So we get an awful lot of UK and European LNG from the US. Obviously, this is going to encourage that, which again emboldens Trump slightly. And then, we have managed to cut our gas demand quite significantly, and we're very lucky this is happening at the end of March and not the end of January, when our demand for gas would have been even greater. So what could push it higher? A complete closure of the strait, or a prolonged closure of the strait. Qatar's one of Qatar's terminals was attacked by Iran, and they predict that that's going to be offline for a period. But if that extends, then obviously that will have impacts longer term. The conflict could spread, and the other thing that will happen, we saw this dramatically during the energy crisis, is competition for LNG from places like China and India and Asia increases, and there's a real bidding war for LNG cargoes, and basically LNG cargoes are bid for as they become available. So they really do go to the highest bidder, and there is still a lot of demand coming from those countries, which currently is being served partly from some of the oil and gas coming out of Iran and other states. But if we have those issues in the Strait of Hormuz, then all that's going to become more and more problematic. So nobody knows the risk, and we're sort of guiding our clients to do something, even if it's just think about what you're doing. Doing nothing and hoping is probably not the right strategy. So what did we see customers do during the last energy crisis? I think it's relevant because we learn lessons from history. So what are we doing? What do we see in 2022? Lots of customers waiting to see, hoping it will come back down, pushing it out another quarter. And the further you wait to make a decision on your energy security and your energy contracts, the nearer the end of the curve, or the nearer the point you have to buy gets, the less chance you've got to outperform volatility. So on average, we saw customers that waited and waited and waited paid nearly 2.5 times more than they could have done. And what do we think people should be doing now? Well, people that have lived through the crisis, and were paying the bills in 2022, can know the costs of indecision. And what we're not saying is rush off and make a decision tomorrow to fix for 3 years, but making a decision to address it and discuss it and talk about it and understand your risk profile, I think, is really important. And there are still some pretty good options available. Prices at the moment are sort of 5-6p on gas and sort of 25 to 30p on electricity. Okay, you could have got it for 22p 6 weeks ago, but you also could have paid 90p for it in 2022. So framing it in that way should help you kind of think about what the right thing for your business. And obviously we've got flexible trading strategies which allow you to buy part of your energy out in 2028, secure some of the better price we can see, and then pause and then wait until the volatility passes. There's all different kind of approaches. So that's the wholesale costs. I'm sure we'll have questions at the end, but we'll push on to other things that are pushing up prices. And one thing that is true is that the indirect taxation on business via its energy is becoming increasingly pronounced, and we've seen a huge rise in non-commodity costs as part of the energy bills. So non-commodity costs are all the things that aren't the energy itself. So it's the transportation, it's the green levies, it's all the taxes. And 5 years ago, they were circa 40% of the bills. Now they're typically 56 to 60% of the bill, and they're not things you can really do very much about. Worse still, they've increased this year, and they're forecast to increase dramatically from April, i.e. tomorrow. There's one particular charge which is going up dramatically, which is going to push up the standing charges. And as you can see, circa 60% of a cost of energy, when it was 23p 2 weeks ago, is now non-commodity charges. But these things are really a big problem. And the bigger your organization and the more power you use, the worse you're going to be impacted. So there's a raft of changes coming through. The first one that I thought I'd mention is the nuclear RAB charge, and it's made up of there's so many different charges that make up the non-commodity charges, including FIT, RO, CFD, CCL, CHIOS, GEOS, and BUOS. Will come onto those, and capacity market. But the RAB charge is the cost of basically the Hinkley Point power station and our investment into that to secure the investment that was needed to build it. And nuclear RAB is about 0.35 pence for every kilowatt will be on your bills, probably, if not already, very, very soon, depending on how suppliers are progressing. Some suppliers are opening up fixed contracts because this is a new cost. Some suppliers are honouring the fixed contracts. It really does depend on a supplier by supplier basis. But one thing you can be assured is next time round, that 0.35 will be in your unit rates. The CHUOS network cost, this is really the cost of passing capacity around the grid. These really are being dramatically priced higher from April, and we'll come on to that primarily because of the fact the government has had to look at upgrading the national grid. Most of our power is generated in Scotland, or certainly our wind power is, and most of the consumption comes in the southeast. And therefore, we have to upgrade the pylon network to be able to carry the electricity from where it's produced to where it's consumed. And the way they've done that is by increasing the CHUOS cost, which is hidden in the standing charges. Now, these kind of rises really do take getting your head round. So if you're a large consumer of power, say you're a factory and you have what's called a high voltage meter, your standing charge in 2027, 2028, and 2026, so in April, is going to go from what was sort of £8,000 a year up to £16,000 a year, and then even more, over £20,000 a year in 2027. So these are the costs you pay for your capacity on the meter, and they really are going to be increasing dramatically. And most of you will start seeing these fed through from the 1st of April this year. So one of the things we'll talk about, there are things you can do to try and fix those. We'll come on to that, or at least align them with what's optimum. The EII, energy intensive industries, they've been given a support to try and make sure production doesn't get forced out of the UK. And to do that, everyone's being charged 0.1, 0.2 pence in the future on every single kilowatt of electricity, really designed to subsidise heavy industry and make costs for them cheaper. So a little bit of help if you are in a manufacturing industry or you're a heavy user and you think might qualify for EII. If you search up your industry type, we can certainly help you apply for those discounts and grants. But yeah, this is another indirect tax on everyone's bill. So given there's lots of increases coming, there are some things you can do. RAB, the nuclear cost, we can't do anything to help you with that. You can't do anything to help. EII support, if you qualify, we can help you apply for it. And CHUOS, this is the one that probably we can do the most about, or certainly look at. CHUOS is related to the capacity. So if you've got 1,000 kilowatt supply or kVA supply, and you're only using a couple of hundred kVA, we can turn that supply down at the grid, and you'll get those charges saved, or you won't be charged those in the first place. And the more you use, it's like a hockey stick. You'll be paying much more for using a higher amount and having a higher capacity. So if you haven't checked your bills in a while, worth digging them out. We could happily look at them for you. And just right sizing this kVA piece is so important given the new increases in costs. If you've got multiple supplies, maybe you're a school or you're a business park or something, combining those into a single connection and having your own network can be a much more cost efficient way of doing it. Pretty hard to do that, pretty expensive, but it can have a pretty big impact on your bills. For those of you that are manufacturing, obviously avoiding peak loads is a smart way of smoothing your demand and lowering your bills. And obviously things like on-site generation. So we do a lot of installs for solar with our clients and CHP. So that's combined heat and power plants that burn gas to make electricity. Or you can add battery to solar to sort of smooth your demand and use the abilities of buying off peak. Now, again, not particularly easy, but they can have quite a high impact in terms of your ability to lower your costs. And then the final one is private wire or embedded networks. So creating your own grid on an industrial estate without having to then use multiple meters and multiple costs and grid connections. Very, very difficult, but will have a big impact if you can do it. The key one, though, is capacity optimization. So it's amazing amount of people that think they understand their energy estate and then they get blindsided by things that they didn't know about or that hit them. So one thing we encourage all of our customers to do when we first engage with them is to really understand their energy portfolio and energy estate and make sure we use the facilities managers or facilities people to check what meters are in the basements, send photos, create a proper inventory, make sure you've got all your water meters. These are the ones that generally catch people out. And then we can start to track the usages, plan the costs, and make sure we understand the full end date portfolios of when these things are coming out of contract. But making sure you've got all your meters is absolutely critical. Collecting energy data, if you're looking at ESG or even for your own internal management, is quite difficult. And it's so important. So lots and lots of billing errors. We think between 10 and 20% of the bills have got errors on them, whether it's VAT being incorrect, whether usage incorrect, and we find some absolutely colossal billing mistakes. We'll come on to some examples later. Lots of people spend lots of time using their teams to produce VAT reports or trying to collate usage reports for their SCCR or their ESOS reports, etc. Looking at manual invoices. Yeah, again, all of these things can be automated. And then finally, most businesses now have some kind of compliance governance that they have to meet. All commercial businesses have some, whether it's just EPC or ESOS or SCCR, and actually having accurate data is increasingly important. So we think, yeah, I said 10 to 20%. Typically, a business will spend, a large multi-site business can spend up to 40 hours collating manual data, invoices, VAT, etc. And as I said, every business in the UK has some kind of commercial building mandatory disclosure now. So the energy management platform that we run, Attainable, what it does is it collects, validates, reports, analyze, and then gives you decisions to act. And it does all of this on a fully automated basis. And we built AI into this about 6 months ago. So it'll automatically flag when you've got a billing error, automatically flag when your usages are spiking, and it lets you generate reports across entire portfolios in a very seamless manner. And this is one of the first things we did for Duncan and Topless across their very diverse portfolio of accountancy practices. All of it can be viewed on a single dashboard. You can collect your carbon, your cost, your usage, and you can analyze. And then more importantly, you can act on it. So we can show you your carbon footprint per square foot, your cost per square foot. And if you've got a building that's particularly inefficient, then it will drive us to look at the reasons for that and come up with some ideas around how we can drive down the costs or make those buildings more efficient. And then the AI bill validation has been really it's incredible. And building Claude into the platform in the last couple of months has driven some incredible insights. So the platform is super clever. You don't have to bring your own bills and go and get them from suppliers. It actually does all that for you. It goes off and collects all the invoices using a robotic process. It will extract the data, put it into the platform, validate everything, and then it will just literally flag to us all the errors in those bills, enabling us really to just focus on those bills for you, or you to focus on them yourselves. You don't have to work with us for your energy procurement. You can just use software to protect and prevent a lot of these things. And then it gives you a very rich platform overview of all of your usage, so you can track your fuel, your cost, you can track your profiles, and it will also suggest things that you can do to be looking at in terms of AI insights, things you might want to look at, so LED lighting or boiler flow optimization, etc., etc. All things that are designed to lower costs by reducing your usages. So moving on to an example case study, Shaftesbury PLC it's got 430 sites across 2,300 meters. They were struggling to pull in data from all their meters using different types of bills. We managed to automate a system which pulls in all the data from all of the meters, centralize the entire platform into one place, and then have multi-layer validation for both their legal completeness by billing on their tenants, but more importantly, just simplifying the whole process. They can now report on that as a single source of truth across their entire portfolio, real time, at a click of a button, enabling their scope 3 reporting to be automated, and then obviously the huge admin reduction saved by people not having to manage this. And then a real life example of where the AI bill val has found the billing error is Echo Studios. They only have a small number of meters, but we put them through onto the platform, and the AI bill val, one of the first things it found was a billing error that saved the customer nearly £11,000, which was more than the entire cost of the platform. And again, it wouldn't have been spotted unless it had been looked at by the AI and processed accordingly. So other ways we can save, given that everything seems to be costing more and more money, and the news is getting worse. The KVA charges, this is, if you take one thing away from this, take the KVA charges away. KVA charges make up a big portion of your bill if you're on what's called a half-hourly meter. The bigger your capacity, the more of a problem it will be. And basically, if they're not optimized effectively, you may be spending a lot of money that you don't need to. And KVA capacities can be tens of thousands a year. So I talked about finding your meters. Why is it important? Some people say, "Oh, I haven't had a bill for that for a few years." That's good. It's not good because you will get a bill for it, and when you do, it'll be enormous, and it'll be out of contract, and it'll probably be double what it should be. So making sure you've got a full portfolio and inventory is really critical. And there's all sorts of tools that we can help you with, like the national database, postcode lookups, just simple things like photos and meters. We can find all the data we need from all your photos and meters. But making sure you've got all of your meters and you know where they all are and whether they're in contract is really, really key. Paying by direct debit. Some people love it, some people hate it. If you don't pay by direct debit, you'll typically pay about 7% more. So, if your concerns are, the bills aren't always right, I like to validate it first. That can be done for you. We can automate the validation to enable you to pay by debit. But if you can move to direct debit, it really will lower the overall cost of your energy. And then perhaps the most important one is staying in contract. So if you fall onto out of contract rates, even for 1 month, the energy supplier will make more in that 1 month than they would have made on the entire contract in the preceding 12 months. So why do energy suppliers like 12-month contracts? Because they're risk-free, and when you forget to renew them, even for 1 month, your prices will go more than double for that month, and their profits will go through the roof. So staying in contract is absolutely critical. And again, the amount of customers we find that have got portfolios where some of it's out of contract, some of it's in contract, again, it's just wasted money. So staying in contract, absolutely critical. So one of the original parts of this was to talk about sustainability. Obviously, we've reshaped it slightly, but it's probably still valid. So I won't go too much into sustainability, but these are the kind of the core building blocks of sustainability. And we really focus on the bits that we can influence, so electricity, gas, fleet, energy, and renewables. Obviously, it's a massively wide topic, and we could talk about an hour for all this on its own. So decarbonising, sometimes people think will cost more money, but actually with the green exemption, the green P442 exemption that you can obtain by matching renewable supplies to your import, actually can save you significantly on some of those standing charges that we've covered off already today. So green energy can be cheaper than brown energy. Green gas at the moment is more expensive, but energy generation on site, again, can be significantly cheaper than buying from the grid, and it will reduce your carbon footprint. These are the things that we really try and focus on with our clients once we've understood what their portfolio is. So moving to green energy or green gas, that will decarbonise you quickly. They're the biggest two things you can do. Things like virtual power purchase agreements, i.e. matching from a wind farm. All these things are really good practice and actually can save you money. Green gas is still expensive, but as part of a strategy, it can be factored in. But things like voltage optimization, this is a box that fits in the organization and it turns down the voltage, that ultimately lowering your power consumption. And we've got a great case study where we rolled this out with delivery, which I'll come on to. Things like solar, EV charging at the moment, obviously getting away from fossil fuel, diesel and petrol. And then things like LED, most people have done LED by now, but if not, there's some specialist boiler and load controls for cooling and boiler controls that we also offer. Green electricity, most people will understand what that is. It's just energy generated from renewable assets that comes with a REGOs backed certificate. And then green gas, it's basically big biomethane digesters, which is made from cows. I'll let you work out the details, or cut grass, and then that gets produced on biomethane. And these are increasingly popular and are deemed much more environmentally friendly than drilling for gas yourselves. So moving on to delivery, we've helped 200 dark kitchens, so delivery only kitchens across the UK, Paris and Dubai. And we've managed so far to save them an awful lot of money on their procurement, and then 92,000 a year by putting in these voltage optimization units, reducing their overall consumption. And that's combined to 87,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide that we managed to save delivery. And that's an ongoing project. We've worked with them for a number of years, and we continue to look at different cost reductions and environmentally friendly energy consumption saving options as well. I added this slide in because I saw a number of people registered were from schools. So we've also got a dynamic marketplace, which is a marketplace set up, which is CCS compliant and gets published. All the tenders get published on the gov.co.uk website. And basically, it allows suppliers to come and join once they passed our process. We can run tenders on public sector companies' behalf, and they're all formal, legal, and compliant. And anyone spending more than £373,000 a year per contract on energy, which will be pretty much everyone these days, should be using either a framework or a marketplace to procure. And again, it's just a really powerful addition to our kit bag. We're one of only two brokers in the UK that have got access to this. So if you're thinking, oh, I can't do this, I've got to work with the CCS, or I've got to work with this, no, we've got a marketplace you can work with, and we can do a lot of the legwork for you as part of that. One good example of an example we did was with the NHS, South Essex NHS Trust. We ran a framework, we used our dynamic marketplace for them and switched them away from their flexible trading, which they are delighted at the minute. We've already saved them £4 million. We found them £1 million refund from a previous supplier because they've been billed to an estimated read on a gas meter, very big gas meter as it turned out. And we found that they've been overpaying for a number of years. So it was a 2.5-year contract. We extended it about 8 weeks ago, brilliantly, thankfully. And we've now got a very happy client in the NHS Trust. So yeah, again, being proactive with your procurement strategies can really help secure you the best prices, but also avoid the complexities of flexible trading, which can be difficult. So I thought I'd finish up by just very quickly saying, what should a good broker do? Because a lot of brokers get a lot of bad press, and some of them rightfully so. And there's obviously a lot of good ones out there as well. So I think the key things for a good broker is they're going to recommend what's right for you, not for them. You know, they should be using a fiduciary duty to say, this is the best option for you, and not just recommending what makes them the most money. They should be comparing all prices like for like, not using Fugazi and trying to make their price look cheap by leaving certain things out. They should compare the whole market, or as many suppliers as they can practically. If you're just being given one price, I'd be a bit concerned. They should make sure the switch is organised, and then make sure the switch happens if you do use a broker. You should always be kept in contract, and you should be really proactive about any renewals you've got coming up. And then make sure they're a member of the Energy Consultants Association and they're a member of the QDS scheme, and make sure that their fees are clear. Make sure they're not hidden away in the small print. Make sure you understand what you're paying for. And then perhaps more importantly, what does a bad one look like? Gives you one price without looking at any others. Uses high pressure tactics to force through you signing. So you've got to sign today, and if you don't, the world's going to end. A lot of competitors don't include all the prices in their prices. So they're presenting certain prices that look as one thing and they're not, or they try and sell flexible contracts or pass-through contracts to a small business. They're probably just too risky. Anyone that says they'll sign for you, run a mile. And then the other one is lowballing. We have this quite a bit. People saying, "Oh, we can get it for you for 12 pence." It's just a lie, and no one can sell energy at 12 pence. They're just not including the cost of the actual energy itself, or they're not including the cost of the non-commodity. So always try and work with somebody that offers, has a decent reputation, and then make sure they give you in-life service, and they're there for you to follow up with. So hopefully you found some of that useful. If you have any questions, I think we're running pretty well on time. So if you wanted to ask for questions, that'd be great.
I'll give you a few minutes. I think they need to go into the Q&A. There's one already, but I'll let a few others gather. In the meantime, can I ask you a question, John?
Sure.
So if your business was going to be out of contract in the next few weeks, what would you do?
Okay, I can actually answer that genuinely, because my house is on heating oil, and I've got about 10% left in my tank. So I'm gonna fill my tank up. And the reason I'm going to fill my tank up is, prices are high at the minute, but I think prices are going to stay high for a long time, and I think there is still risk that prices go even higher. That's my personal opinion. It's not my professional one. What would happen if Trump does invade Karg Island, blockades Iran? Yeah, militarily, it will give the Iranians something to shoot at, so it will perhaps calm down other attacks on other third-party countries. but it's going to escalate, and it's going to escalate rapidly. And we saw this during the last crisis. When the war kicked off in Ukraine, it was bad, and then when they blew up, when whoever blew up the pipeline, the gas pipeline from Russia, everyone's still denying that, by the way. Then we saw it get materially worse and materially quicker. So if you're out of contract in the next few months, you have to do something. Otherwise, your out of contract prices will be double anyway. So you can't not do something. And I think what we would do is we would say, let's have a look at the different lengths of contract: 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. 3 year contracts are much cheaper at the moment than the 1 and 2 year contracts, because obviously I think the market will get better. And I think it's entirely up to the risk of the balance of risk, cost, and having that talk through with somebody sensibly to say, look, 1 year contracts might be the best thing, might be, who knows, but they're only fixed for 1 year. If it's prolonged, it could be difficult. If in a year's time prices have doubled, how would you feel? Yes, you might save a few percent, but inflation is going to be 4%. So it's kind of like, I think it's just having somebody who can talk these things through with you that you really trust. I think that's the most important bit. So I can see Chris has asked the question: what are the factors making green gas more expensive? Do you see these reducing in future? So the factors that make green gas more expensive is purely supply and demand. So at the moment, there's not much of it, and lots of people want to buy it because there's still lots of organizations that do want to buy green gas. Obviously, as well, at the moment, you've got to build a bio plant, which costs capital investment, whereas the capital investment for the gas wells have been sunk pretty much. So I think there's a production cost part, but I think primarily there's not much of it, and there's lots of people want to buy it. And will they get better in future? Yeah, I hope so. There's a huge new gas plant being built on the edge of the M3, sorry, just by the A34. And I think there's increasing number of these being built. So I really do hope so. And the cost of green gas has come down certainly since I've been doing this, which is 10 years. It was more than double. It's not quite, it's nowhere near double now, but it is still a premium.
Excellent. Doesn't seem to be any other Q&As in the Q&A section at the moment, but obviously reach out to myself or John if you have any thoughts after the webinar. And thank you, John, for your time today. It's great to understand how you're helping your current clients. I think we'd all like a crystal ball to see what happens next, and to understand when normality might return. But I think it's something that lots of our clients face in other ways. It's not just energy, it's that kind of scenario-based forecasting, how much could it go up to and you still have a viable business, that will help you make your decisions on what level you want to fix on. And it sounds like even without the impact of the recent changes, costs were going to increase, so we need to be thinking ahead. So the three things I think I scribbled down some notes. So looking at KVA capacity, don't leave your contract review till the very end, and consider greener energy to reduce your standing charges. But you're the expert in this field, so if anybody would like to reach out to me or John, then please do, because we'd love to be able to help your businesses.
Great, thank you very much, Diane.
I don't think there are any other Q&As. So yeah, if anyone would like any other help for their business or like us to consider anything else other than energy, then that would be great.
So there's one more question here. We're in contract. We're planning to install solar panels this year, so we will not need contract. So I think if you install solar panels, you'll still need an energy contract. You'll obviously need less energy, but solar panels don't work at night, and solar panels very rarely can provide all the energy even during peak demands. So yeah, you'll always need an energy contract, and you just need to make sure that there's no volume tolerances in that energy contract. And the volume tolerance is the amount that you have to buy minimum versus maximum. And we've got a range of suppliers that can give you volume tolerance contracts without any volume tolerance in there at all. If you're a very small business, you probably won't have a VT in there, but large companies will almost certainly have a VT in there. So then definitely worth checking. I think that's all of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. We'll let you get back to your lunch. And yeah, as I said, if you need to reach out, then please feel free.
Thanks very much.